Teron Downey was our starting point guard when a young kid named Chris Paul showed up on campus.
No kidding.
I know that name.
And Teron ended up with appendicitis before the first game, which was a preseason NIT up in New York. And that was when Chris went on to the main stage.
Mind your business. Mind your business. Mind your business. Mind your business.
For the people who are learning to mind their business.
Mind Your Business is a podcast that we do for the fans, 680 and 93.7 FM. My name is Tug Cowart, along with Phil Hudson. Today we have a really cool guest. Shah is in with us on the show, and you've invited him, Phil. Certainly appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yes, I got to know Mitt at my last job when I worked for the business newspaper, and I think it would be fair to say, kind of like king of hotels in Atlanta. I want to go throwback. I always wanted to, and I just found out the answer, but I want to get it from the horse's mouth. How you got into the hotel business?
As I kind of went through my upbringing, it became really curious and interesting for me about how people and kind of processes and just how it all worked together. And so when I went to college, I had all this great experience, and there was an ad in the school newspaper that the University Conference Center that was run by Marriott at the time was looking for someone to run the front desk. So I show up, and I was still 17 at the time, and I showed up and they're like, you're a freshman. I said, yeah. And he goes, we're really looking for somebody with experience. I said, well, I've got that experience.
Yeah,
I've got a bunch of years.
7 years.
I checked the box.
I got that job. Went, and worked there all my 4 years. Learned a ton, and it was an incredible experience.
What was this is way off, but there's a Downey who played at Wake Forest.
Teron Downey.
So his brother went to my military school.
Teron Downey was our starting point guard when a young kid named Chris Paul showed up on campus.
No kidding.
I know that name.
And Teron ended up with appendicitis before the first game, which was a preseason NIT up in New York. And that was when Chris went on to the main stage. And Teron could not have been a greater mentor, leader,
That's cool.
Love that.
Friend and partner to him. But
Is Wake Forest where you got bit by the basketball bug?
I grew up with the basketball bug. Growing up
Just
in North
being in
Carolina,
Winston-Salem.
Yeah, you can't help
it's
it.
like if you grow up in North Carolina or Indiana,
it's just ingrained.
And you've all heard the story by the ACC basketball tournament. You're in middle school and sixth grade, and all of a sudden it's Friday at noon. Of the ACC basketball tournament, and all classes are shut down, and
stop.
The teacher rolls in the TV, and you're watching the first game. I mean, that's what I grew
That's
up
North
in.
Carolina,
and it's just to this day it's still the greatest sport.
So if you were talking to a high school class today in 2 sentences, how would you describe Noble Investment Group?
In 2 sentences, we build and buy hotels, and that generate an income stream that provide for our investors who are state pensions, endowments, and the like. So essentially, we're responsible for the retirement benefits for hundreds of thousands of our country's school teachers, policemen, firemen, as well as provide resources for kids to go to college.
We're going to transition a little bit and maybe move into
The Atlanta Hawks.
Atlanta Hawks.
So we had
where my heart beats strong.
Our buddy John Collins in here, who's a big fan of yours. This is a fair question. Are you a bigger fan of his now, or is he still a bigger fan of yours?
I'm a bigger fan of his.
You really? So is that,
That's modesty talking right there.
So that's got to be a little bit weird. So you get to meet. So for those of you who don't know, go back and listen to the John Collins episode. John played at Wake Forest, got to know Mitt there. Is it weird when you see these guys as freshmen and you're like, you're a basketball nut. Can you look at him and be like, he's going to the NBA?
No.
Okay.
No.
So is it weird when you see them at first and they're just the starry-eyed freshmen, and then 3 years later they're on the hard court at down at State Farm Arena playing?
Yeah. Well, let me back up for a second. So I answer the question. It's hilarious. I took my wife to her first college basketball game.
Did she know you were a nut?
Dating. She didn't know. She knew that I was a nut, but not necessarily a basketball
Not a basketball nut.
And so she's seen this this young gangly freshman go up and down the court, and she goes, you know what, this guy's gonna be pretty good. I'm like, really? And it's like, yeah. It's just like he seems really coordinated. It was Tim Duncan. I had no idea.
Okay, yeah.
And
So she's the scout.
But sometimes you can see that. Like, by the way, you watch Duke play the other night. All those kids are going. They're super good, right?
Yeah.
But for John. What was interesting about John, and I've seen a lot of kids come through Wake. This is my third term as a member of the board of trustees, and Skip Prosser was one of my best friends in the entire world, rest his soul, and Danny Manning and I've become very good friends. So I've get to meet these kids early on. It's actually, I met Chris Paul when he was 16 years old. He was
Right.
a kid from
That's
Winston-Salem. And
Right.
I'll go back to that in just a second. But with John, it was a little unique. What you saw immediately out of John when he was, was a freshman coming in, is that he was extremely personable. Sometimes you see a lot of these kids, they're very introverted. Or they've grown up without a lot of people in their lives that have kind of shown them how to act in situations.
Still a normal kid.
Or even be confident.
Or being
Teaching
They don't
confidence.
look you in the eyes and stuff. But
Right.
John, you immediately,
Gravitate
grabs you
to
a
him.
hand, puts the other hand around you,
Yeah.
and
Still
Very
that way.
embracing.
you just told you knew that his mama raised him right,
Yeah.
which Leary had raised a fine young man, but you didn't know what his potential was because he didn't really play a whole lot his freshman year at Wake. He was behind Devin Thomas, and so you knew the kid had real potential, but you didn't really see it manifest itself until he really got to college, put in a ton of work on his own. Bought into all the development, and Ryan Horton's our strength and conditioning coach over there. He's outstanding. So John worked on his body, worked on his game, and what you saw his sophomore year at Wake, that transformational impact was really special. And you see that a lot of times between freshman and sophomore. You see that a lot of times between rookies and second years.
Sure.
Just that evolution. You have to have a kind of a year underneath your belt, for that to take place. And same happened with Chris and with Jeff Teague at Wake and others. I mean, you can go down the line. But John's transformation was something really special. And as he was, thinking about his decision in which, to go pro, I got to see him a couple of times. I saw him, on campus, and then I saw him out in L.A. and or in the game. And I knew, with our Hawks and being in the draft room that night, that our team, our basketball guys really thought high of him. And if he was available when we picked, I mean,
Had to make you smile a little bit.
It's interesting, and Travis Schlink was was our new general manager at the time. It was just a really interesting time period because nobody really expected him to be available when we picked at 19, and he was.
So with that, Tony Resler as the chairman, Grant Hill's the vice chairman. Yeah. How did that group come together?
Well, it really came about obviously Tony and his dream of really not only wanting to be an owner in the NBA, but putting a group together that had some unique characteristics, both in terms of skill sets as well as kind of what they, the different perspectives that they bring to the table. And I'll say this: I never had this envision of being a part of an ownership team. And Jesse Itzler, who I think and I have become really good friends. And
have you heard his hip hop song?
Yeah,
back in the day,
I'll tell you
just
what,
passed 1 million views on YouTube.
I tell you what, he is as exceptional of a person. Like he only has one speed. He only has one speed.
Yeah, totally.
Let's go.
Right.
Every single
Full blast.
time.
And he has to. Sarah's the same way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you talk about good people. So and Chris actually introduced Jesse and I together, so we were friends. And then all of a sudden we're sitting next to each other at games, and Jesse knew Grant, Jesse knew Rick Schnall, Jesse kind of had all these relationships. So he introduced me to today some of the very best friends that I have.
Wow.
I mean,
That's cool.
Cool.
This group, this really small group. Has come together, and they're just good people.
Some stuff with La Quinta, and I think I saw a picture of you at the Ringing the Bell at New York Stock Exchange. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Was that cool?
It was awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
really,
Was that your first
really
time?
awesome.
For a
First
businessman, of
time.
course.
Yeah, like
Was that your first time?
It was those little special times. You kind of like, and I never really envisioned that either, right? And when you walk in those halls and what that stock exchange really meant, to get an opportunity to do that was truly one of the special business moments. I've this is probably going to digress off the topic, but we have worked to build a really great board. And so, we've had outstanding leaders in the board. We've actually got a very diverse board. And I know diversity is something that's being talked about, quite a bit. And I'll tell you that there's not a meeting that we have and a conversation that we have that I'm not learning something from this incredible group of people. So I think two things are really cool. One is that there was an outstanding group that was put together to kind of find value in this business. That was done. And there was this execution that was fantastic that, I feel very proud of. The other is that I believe that I've gotten just, much better as a leader, just having being around
sink or swim
people
kind of
like
thing,
that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been a pretty good.
Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes?
I really do wake up every day and think of every day as a blessing. Like I get to be with I get to be the girl of my dreams. Who's still, I'm on a month-to-month contract, but I mean, I'm still in tow.
Hanging in there.
We've got great kids that we're super proud of, and I get to spend my days with, a group of people that just trusted in me and believed in me, and we've done a pretty decent job, over that time. So and then I go to some basketball games.
Yeah, right.
Bud Light's doing their Super Bowl Fest at State Farm Arena.
What a lineup
Which
that
is
is!
super cool.
So that's how I know.
What a lineup!
If you had to choose only one night to go to, which one would it be?
I think
you better go where I hope you go. Or I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah, I think Bruno Mars and
Come
Cardi
on,
B,
man.
Like that's
Luda.
gonna be. That,
Luda, all
well,
right.
listen,
You've seen Luda, and
of course,
Yeah.
and I love Luda and all that. Those are hometown boys.
Yeah.
But I've never seen Bruno Mars.
Dude, he was at the Grammys. And I wasn't a big fan of him.
Incredible.
He crushed it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So last thing I got for you, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's interesting. I would want people to really think that when I did something, I did it for the right reasons. That generosity is one of those things that I really believe in. I feel like if you take care of people and places and we've got a great foundation. It's one of the other things about the Hawks that I'm so proud of. All these community centers and courts that we're building around the
Oh, yeah,
city
the courts
is
around the city are
really great.
unbelievable.
I mean, it's actually
they're great.
if you ask me one reason why I pivoted and I said, yeah, I'm going to do this. All the people were great. The opportunity was great. I love basketball. It was the mission that Tony was really grounded in, and Jamie, about that. So I would want, if there's one word, it's generosity.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll give a little anecdotal. You were there. I met you when I was up, and you stuck by me when I was down, and I appreciate that.
That's very cool. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I would like to add is that if we can ever help out with that Hawks Foundation, if there's anything that we can do, we can promote, whether on this podcast or on Atlanta Sports X or The Fan or whatever, man, I just want to extend that offer just to say whatever, man. If it's a foundational thing where it can help and benefit the community or kids, specifically kids, because that's where my heart is, please don't hesitate to call Phil or call me or call David Dickey. I'm sure you guys have each other's number, but make sure you let us help.
I think that's a great
And
idea.
don't ever let them trade Bazemore.
Yeah,
Ever. That's our guy, man.
Bay's the best.
That's our guy, dude.
He's the best.
You talk about giving back to the community. We love Baze, man.
Yeah.
That guy is an incredible
Salt of the earth.
human being.
No
incredible
question.
human being.
Got a good agent. We like his agent.
Yeah,
He's
I
got-
ran into him at a Georgia game just randomly. I'm sitting at the game.
You know
It's-
Austin?
Do you know? Yeah.
He's
So
awesome.
I'm sitting at the game and I look over my shoulder. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that guy.
Yeah.
And it took me a
He's been
second.
on our show.
It took me a second to jog my memory. I'm like, all right, why do I know the guy that's sitting behind me? Where do I know him from? And I knew it was from something at work. And then I started finally piecing it together. And I was like, Austin,
Yeah.
dude, how are you? And he's there with family and friends.
He's a hard worker.
He is a great kid, and we didn't even get really to Trey Young, who has been tremendous too, and he's got the brightest future ever. But running out of time, Mitch Shah, thank you so much for spending time with us on Mind Your Business, Sports, Music, and Money. It is the podcast for the Fan, 680 and 93.7 FM.